If your business is doing around 25 to 40K per month, but it still feels really unstable, there are usually three systems missing inside of your business. And until those systems exist, scaling past 50K will feel much heavier instead of actually easier. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what those systems are. Some time back, I actually worked with a consultant who was doing around 28K per month. He was happy because clients were always coming in, our revenue looked really healthy. For most, from the outside, the business looked like actually growing. But behind the business, everything felt really tight. The pipeline itself was inconsistent, delivery was really chaotic, and cash flow made hiring really risky. Every month for him, it felt like starting again. So what we did? We didn't change the offer. We didn't run new ads. We didn't add more services. We installed just three simple systems. Within 2 months, the business moved from 28K to 115K per month. But more importantly, business felt stable. And that's what this video is all about. Structure and systems you need to scale and stabilize your business. So stick till the end of this video, because by end of this video, you will understand and learn, number one, why most service businesses stall between 25 and 50K per month. Number two, the three systems that create stability before actual scale. Number three, the financial numbers that healthy service businesses actually track. And it's really important because I have seen most of the biggest failures in business comes to actually not knowing the numbers. Number four, what founders usually feel at this stage and why. And number five, how to diagnose which systems are missing in your current business. And six, the tools and frameworks that turn unstable growth into predictable actual growth. Okay, so why 25K to 50K is a difficult stage? This stage is deceptive because the business is working. You have clients, you have revenue coming in, some reputation, and maybe a small team behind you, but you don't have an actual operational structure. The biggest flaw in a lot of businesses, anywhere between 20 to 50K, is they don't have a system operational protocols inside of their businesses. So what does that look like? I have seen a lot of things currently in the level between 25 to 50K a month. A founder is doing 80% of most of the work. And a lot of times when the founder is trying to delegate, what ends up happening is it adds more stress on top of the actual founder. Why? Because he doesn't have the right processes, doesn't have the right systems and standardization. He can also train the actual employees into a process, because for him, he doesn't have those systems. So what ends up happening is that the employee now goes to the founder every time, asks for approval, a validation of ideas, asks for like input in certain things, asks for questions consistently, and this adds more stress because now you're not only fulfilling and doing what you were doing before, but now you're also answering questions on top of everything else, and that becomes really stressful. Also, your demand, right? You don't have systemized demand. Maybe there's a couple ways you get leads in, and all the time those channels or where you get leads from really depend on a lot of factors. So you don't have even systemized lead generation currently inside of your business. The delivery is not maybe systemized as well. Your delegation process is not standardized and systemized as well. And your conversion maybe is not systemized and customized as well, to a point where it becomes a process that you can drive with actual scale. So you have clients, you have revenue, some reputation, maybe a small team, but you don't have the operational structure. And when structure is missing, growth creates pressure, right? At this stage, founders often feel busy all the time, right? Doing everything, always responding to actual problems, uncertain about hiring, and revenue coming in, but profits feel inconsistent. There's a lot of things why profits feel inconsistent between 25 to 50K. Number one is it costs you more to fulfill the client than actually getting in the client. Or let's say maybe you're getting a client would cost you $10,000, but to fulfill them will cost you $7,000. So there's really short profit margins. And because you don't have a lot of profit margins, you maybe can't even find a really talented team that can help you to get the business to the next level. Or you maybe can't even invest into advertising and testing more because your profit margins are really small. Another thing is, instead of doing 3 hours to fulfill one client, now it takes 7 hours to fulfill a client. Maybe you have hired somebody, but they're not really hired into the right process. You haven't given them the right training, and they're kind of free flowing around your business. That's also could be the reason, right? There's a lot of things, and one of biggest one of them is that there's not enough profit for you to actually scale, and this comes down to not understanding the numbers, right? So you're busy at all the time, you're always responding to problems, uncertain about hiring, revenues coming in, but profit feeling consistent. The reason is simple: the business is still running on effort instead of actual systems, okay? And sometimes you're probably feeling like you're catching yourself all the time. So the three systems missing. Most businesses between 25 and 50K per month are missing three critical systems. System one is demand system. The first system is predictable demand system. Predictability inside of your actual lead engine, okay? So like you can then forecast how many leads you'll be getting for the next 3 months, okay? If you currently can't forecast, right? Or you maybe don't know even how to forecast, that shows me there's a lot of unpredictability currently inside of your business. And one of those reasons is because you don't have a systemized actual demand. What I mean by systemized demand is that, let's say I'm running Facebook ads, I can predict then how many leads I will have, or how many leads I will be speaking this month, next month, and the next month after that month, right? And so I can start slowly forecasting as well. And the forecasting can give me the estimated pipeline value. And from the estimated pipeline value, I can then also, with the closing ratio, having a conversion rate, I can then calculate how much profit we should be bringing in every month thereafter, okay? Without having these numbers in front of you, it really becomes difficult, okay? So at this stage, many businesses rely on referrals, word of mouth, random outreach, and occasional marketing. The problem with this is simple. Referrals are not predictable. 1 month they appear and next month they maybe disappear. And that creates revenue actual swings. And a lot of businesses, sometimes when they come to us, 1 month they did 30K a month, and the next month they did maybe about 12 to 15K a month. And the reason for it is because some months you would have your referrals coming in, and then sometimes you have like a couple random DMs that slid in there, and some of them really felt like, okay, this is what I need, so they kind of jumped on board with you. And then the next month you have nothing happening, right? And so you are kind of on a zero. And then the next month after that month, because you have generated so much activity, you are again generating 20 to 30K, right? And this is because you don't have predictable engine driving leads inside of your business, right? And that creates a revenue swings. A demand system means you can answer one question: how do leads enter the business every single week? Every single week, how do they enter, right? You must know that. And it's not good enough to say, hey, yes, I have few referrals there, word of mouth, and then random outreach and occasional marketing. No, I mean like one way. Give me one way how leads enter every single week. If you can't answer that, you don't have predictable demand system. So example channels could include LinkedIn outreach, email outbound, paid ads, partnerships, consistent content. The key is consistency. Marketing cannot turn on and off, because leads generated today usually convert into 30 to 90 days later. When marketing stops, future revenue also disappears, okay? One of the biggest things that I also see, and just to give you a little bit of kind of insights, I see a lot of businesses, sometimes they stop marketing. It's like they market, they get revenue, and then now founder is spending more time on actual delivery. And so what ended up happening, it was like, hey, because I can't convert, I can't do this, I can't do that, let's just stop marketing. And then once I have delivery kind of, I'm mostly kind of have fulfilled most of the clients, we can then get back to actual marketing. And so this is why is also a big reason why a lot of you have like 0 months. You are like walking through the desert. For this not to happen, your marketing should be running consistently. Always market, because marketing is the one thing that will always bring in leads, and leads will always bring in revenue. Without those two things, you can't really scale a business, or you probably will not have a business, right? And this is why when your marketing stops, your future revenue also disappears. Simple demand framework. A simple demand system tracks 3 numbers: leads generated, sales calls booked, and deals closed. That's it, right? Leads generated, how many leads did we generate this week? How much leads we generated next week? How much leads were generated week 3rd? And how much leads were generated this month? How many leads of those actually booked in the call? How many of those leads that booked in a call were actually closed into paying clients? Okay. So example, if you want to generate 50K per month and your average deal is 5K, you need 10 clients per month. If your close rate is 25%, you need 40 sales conversations. So that means your demand system must produce roughly 10 calls per week. Once you know these numbers, growth becomes measurable because then you can start measuring, okay? So again, let's say you want, right now you're looking like, hey, I want to get to 50K per month. And you sell about a service maybe worth 5K, right? That means you need to close 10 clients. Knowing that your close rate is 25%, you need 40 sales conversations, okay? From 40 sales conversations, you can then expect to close 10, which will put you on 10K per month. Sorry, 50K per month, okay? Once you know these numbers, then it's really easy to measure the growth and also forecast for future. So system number 2, delivery system, right? The second missing system is the delivery. At 25 to 40K, most businesses' delivery is kind of different every time as a different type of client comes. And so most of the times I have spoke to a lot of founders, they said, well, you know, my delivery is kind of customized because I like to stay in the premium services. A premium service doesn't necessarily mean that now it's customized service, right? Because if you look at Porsche is still selling the same models again and again and again and again. And it's still premium service. They still give you premium service. They give you still premium product, right? Each client becomes a new project, and that becomes really a big problem for most businesses. That creates insufficiencies. Delivery systems also can solve this for you. By not having those systems, you're always having to deliver differently. And you can really train your team because your team then, they cannot adjust to every client being different. You need to have a standardization inside of the business because then the team can be trained and they can evolve and with time going by, okay? So a delivery system means the service is delivered through repeatable steps. Example, right? Instead of random work, delivery follows stages: discovery stage, strategy, implementation, and the review. Each stage has defined tasks, responsible team member, and expected actual timeline, or I would say deadline, okay? When delivery becomes standardized, two things happen. Work takes less time, quality becomes consistent. When you don't have it standardized, and when we have like a different fulfillment for each different client, each client will have different type of quality results, and there will be different times. And I'll tell you a big problem with this is, sometimes because you have different clients fulfilled differently, now one client will take 3 hours to fulfill, another one client will take 10 hours to fulfill. Why? Because they don't have the same process of which the fulfillment is happening. And because they are so different, there's different time included. With different time included, there's different billable hours. With those different billable hours, your also profits changes. And most of the times profit starts to shrink because you are so customized, okay? With standardization, you protect those actual margins as well, okay? So delivery math, this is very important because you need to understand the numbers. Healthy service business usually aim for 50 to 60% gross margin. Example, so let's say your revenue is 40K. Delivery cost should stay around 16 to 20K. If delivery cost rises to 28K, the business will feel stressful even when strong revenue, okay? Even if you have revenue coming in, the reason you feel stressful because it costs you a lot to fulfill clients, okay? And so you should really be thinking about how can you aim to get 50 to 60% gross margins inside of the actual business. This is why delivery systems matter. They protect the actual profit margin itself. Like, so a lot of clients would say, well, I can fulfill all my clients. It's not a problem. I'm not saying that fulfilling clients is a problem. I'm saying that your profitability becomes really an issue and a problem, because the more hours you need to invest with each client, now also the quality drops. And the more hours you need, the more expenses there are. And so that's why it's really important for you to make sure that your profit margins always stay stable. And so the biggest problem I see with a lot of founders is that the reason their profit margin is shrinking because every client is kind of custom solution, right? So the client comes in, they're being offered completely something different from the previous client. They're being delivered completely different. Their team sometimes takes even more hours. Their team starts to ask more questions because the team is also a little bit confused on how this client has to be fulfilled compared to the last client. And this all is adding up to a financial number. And that financial number then indicates your profitability inside of the business and also your profit margins, okay? So system 3, operation systems, right? The third system is operations. Operations mean the business has visibility. You know what is happening inside the business every single week. Most founders at 25 to 50K don't track enough information. Operation systems track things like pipeline value, right? So that means how much value do we currently have in the pipeline? active clients, delivery capacity, revenue forecast, and profitability per client. Without these numbers, decisions become really like guesswork. With them, decisions become really simple and you can better understand. So I'll give you an example. I had a client, I work with an agency owner, and he kept saying to me, I asked him, so how many clients can you really take on every single month? He was like, hey, I can take as much as I can. Like, I can take as much as I want. Like, I don't have any problem. I can take even 100 if I want. And I said, like, how do you calculate that you can take 100? He was like, well, most is really simple. I just have to hook up a few of my AI systems there and now, and that's about it. And then I asked him, okay, well, like, I said, but you still need to have delivery capacity, right? It was like, no, because I can take as much clients as I want, right? And I said, like, how much does each client cost you to fulfill? He was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, so what is the profit inside of the business then? Like, how much profit do you have? Well, one client pays us $10,000, and I feel like we have few subscriptions there, but it should be around, he said, should be around maybe about 6-7K, the profit. I was like, okay, that's good. And then as we start looking into more numbers, I start understanding he doesn't even know his own business. Because first of all, his profit margins were below 50%, okay? Because there was not only like some subscriptions, there was also, he had to pay his team to do most of the work. Then those subscriptions, depending on the volume of each, like let's say he has more clients being added to his business, some subscriptions would increase the actual monthly subscription because now there's more volume being added. Okay, that's number two. Next thing is also he couldn't forecast his revenue because he didn't know his profitability. He didn't know even the pipeline value because that was not being tracked. So that all becomes an actual problem. Okay. And so that's why I mean when you need to know your numbers inside of your business. Without these numbers, decisions become really like guesses. With them, decisions become really simple. And so a lot of times I hear like, oh, I can take as much clients I want, but without you understanding how much clients you can really take, like how much does it cost you to fulfill one client? How much does it cost you to fulfill two clients? How much does it cost to pay your team to fulfill them? Like there's a lot of expenses involved. Like even your time, like do you calculate how much time? If you don't bill your own time, let's say you say, hey, I did 4 hours, but that's me as a founder, that doesn't count. Well, then you're wrong because your time also costs. Like how much are you worth every hour, right? And if you don't know even how much you are worth to your business every hour, well, then there's a huge problem as well, because then even if you give 10 hours, you feel like, well, that was not. But let's say you do 10 hours, you fulfill 10 hours, and you say, wow, I'm actually worth 10,000. I'm actually worth 20,000 in 10 hours. But I fulfilled somebody who I could replace myself with somebody just to paying them $1,000. Then you should do that, because now your profitability is also shrinking because your time is taken away from what actually could be scaling the business. So a simple operator dashboard. Every week you should review leads generated, sales calls booked, deals closed, pipeline value, active clients, team capacity, and cash reserve. Even a simple spreadsheet works, okay? But the data must exist inside of your business in order for you to make decisions. So what should this stage feel like? At 25 to 30K, the business still feels intense. And that's normal. At 30 to 40K, structure should start appearing inside of the business. At 40 to 50K, the business should begin feeling more predictable. If the business still feels chaotic at 40K, the problem is usually missing systems, not demand, okay? So an agency example. One agency I worked with was doing about 35K per month. Their biggest problem were inconsistent leads, messy delivery, and no pipeline actual tracking. They didn't know how much was in the pipeline. They even didn't know who they needed to speak to. I have seen sometimes they said to me, well, we had few leads there. I need to catch few leads. I have them written on a piece of paper. I have them in a different sheets. I need to come together. They didn't even know who to follow up with. They said, oh, by the way, like I had these 2 clients that I need to follow up last week, but I forgot. And that's going to put me up a little bit more than revenue. Like, that means everything lives inside of your head, and that becomes really a problem, okay? So what we did, we installed 3 systems. Demand system through outbound LinkedIn, delivery system with standardized onboarding and campaign process, and operations dashboard tracking weekly metrics. Within 5 months, the agency moved to 60K per month. But they moved to 60K per month, but they were really stable, okay? Because another reason is you may say, hey, 5 months and the agency moved to 60K per month is not a lot. but he needed to stay at 60K because that was his capacity and he didn't want to do more. Now we can actually scale his business way more than 60K per month, but we didn't because his capacity and how much work he actually wanted to do without taking a time away from his family was at 60K per month, okay? So more importantly, the founder stopped feeling overwhelmed and growth felt manageable as well at that point, okay? So I want you to understand this. Most businesses believe scaling requires more effort, but the truth is scaling requires structure. Between 25K and 50K per month, the goal is not aggressive growth. The goal is installing systems that make growth predictable. So having demand system, having delivery system, or number 3, having operations system. Once those exist, scaling becomes much easier as well. Without them, every new client creates more pressure. So this is super important why you need to know the numbers inside of your actual business, okay? So if you are a consulting business, agency, or service business, this channel has been designed to help you to move from reactive growth to actually engineered systems. I want you to, if this really added value, I want you to subscribe to this channel, because in my channel, you're going to learn how to go from anywhere between 10 to 25K to 100K per month with structure instead of actually just chaos, okay? Everything that I'm sharing in my channel is 100% from my personal experience, selling businesses, scaling businesses, moving, failing more times than I can count, and really being into the trenches to understanding what it actually takes to scale businesses. So subscribe to my channel. Now, like and comment as well. It's going to help me to rank much higher, but comment down below if you need more clarity on this and more understanding on the actual numbers, or you maybe want me to make a different type of content.